afternoon, Mr. Hashani. Thank you so much for allowing us to interview you for our student-credited video for the 2021 to 2022 Fairchild Challenge. Mr. Hashani is the orchestra teacher at our school and has been gracious enough to share a little about the integration of the Kosovian and American culture. Both Mr. Hashani and his wife were born and raised in the area currently known as Kosovo. Kosovo is a landlocked area that borders the country of Serbia. While they grew up eating food from their homeland and they are now living and raising two sons in Miami, as you can imagine, the cultures and customs in the two areas are very different.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hashani. Again, thank you for your time. My name is Jolie Kirsten. I'd like to start off our interview. How did food help define your cultural identity during your childhood and early years in Kosovo?
Well, the thing is that you don't realize how food defines your culture until you move somewhere else. So I guess when I came to the US, I realized, oh man, there's so many things that are different. For example, there's a fun fact I always use is that for the first time in my life, I tried fried chicken here in the US. We don't eat a lot of fried foods back home, and fried chicken has just never existed in our diet. So mostly Mediterranean diet and somewhat like Eastern European type dishes, like stuffed cabbage.
So it sounds like food played an important role. It is our understanding that your family moved to the United States out of necessity for your safety. First of all, we at SMMCS are thrilled to have you. How long have you been living in Miami?
So I've been living here since 1999. And yes, we had to move out of Kosovo because we had a war going on, and my family and I came here as refugees. And so did my wife, but my wife had moved originally to Canada, and then she moved over to, she moved here when we got married.
So that's long enough to really miss home, but long enough to have adapted to a few American customs. What foods from Kosovo do you still eat in your home on a regular basis?
Food, well, we're really lucky now. I mean, when we moved 22 years ago, there was not a lot of foods from back home here. But now, with a lot of people from that part of the world moving here, we have our local stores, we have our local food that we could buy. So yeah, like one of the most, the dishes that we eat the most often is like spinach pie. Like the Greeks have like a spanakopita, right? So my wife makes that. We buy the filo dough in the store, and we buy the spinach, feta cheese, and then she makes it. Ayvar is another one. It's a pepper spread that we use. It's something that is a big custom back home. We put it in a jar. We eat it in the morning with eggs. And then we have little kebabs, like ground beef and ground veal mixed together. So these are things that we can now readily buy and just cook them here, right? Rather than like start from scratch.
I can honestly say I've never had that pepper spread. What's in it and how do you make it?
Okay, so the pepper spread, Ivan, is something that we used to make home around September. It's a dish that it requires a lot of peppers, and the way it's made is the peppers are baked first, then they're peeled off, then they're put in a grinder, like a meat grinder, into like a pulp. And then eggplant is added, a little bit of garlic and oil, and that's cooked. Once it's cooked, it's put in a jar, cooled down, and then you can put it on bread, or eat it on the side with eggs in the morning, or even just have it like a spread, like in a sandwich. Like instead of putting mayo, you put a pepper spread, and you can make it mild or spicy based on what type of peppers you use.
Now, is that a traditional holiday food or just something you would eat on a normal daily basis?
Okay, that's actually something you would eat over the winter. That's something you prepare for the winter, because then there's no more vegetables over the winter. So you the same way you pickle, like peppers, or you pickle your cucumbers in a dill, like a dill. That's how you put that on the.
I think I'd eat it all the time, but is there any food that you can't eat now that you and your family can't get the ingredients for?
Well, not really, but there are some ingredients that are hard to find. Like the fruit that is called a quince. Does everybody know what a quince is?
No.
Quince is a very large, and very hard and very sour type of fruit. It's huge. It's like a humongous apple, this shape. And we used to make jelly out of it. and it's delicious, and it's very hard to find. That's something we was saying as was in pepper spray. We used to make it every winter, but you can't get quinces in the U.S. And back home they're like everywhere. It's like mangoes here, everywhere. When there's mango season, there's so many, and we jar them. We used to also boil them and eat them like like a juice. Like a juice with a little fruits in it, like the little cans of fruit that we have. We used to jar them, so that's one thing. But we can almost find everything here now, so we're very, very happy and glad that we can do it. Yeah.
And do you ever adapt the traditional recipes to use local foods from South Florida? Like, do you add some logos?
Yes. In fact, that you say that, we have, like I mentioned, the spanakopita, right? The spinach pot. Okay. So we have come to make a new recipe. My wife now makes the same way she would make a spinach pie. She makes a sweet potato pie. But it's not like a pie, like a traditional pie, like a dessert. It's like pulled in phyllo, and it's delicious. So we've adopted. Also, what we've adopted here is most of our recipes back home include beef or ground beef. And we have substituted a lot of that with ground turkey, right? So ground turkey, right, is healthier and sometimes juicier. So we've changed a lot of that to turkey. And my mom's famous recipe, for example, for stuffed cabbage. So stuffed cabbage is you take the cabbage, you boil it, and then inside the cabbage you put ground beef, rice, and spices. So we've substituted the ground beef and the rice for ground turkey and quinoa. So now it's quinoa, ground beef, and ground turkey and spices, and that's how it's cooked. So we've made a lot of changes, right? So just to adapt to the local things.
Yeah, actually, my family, we also eat quinoa sometimes.
Right.
We ate it a lot in Cuba, and when we came here, we found the recipe and we found all the ingredients, and we also made it
Exactly. So
sometimes.
quinoa is good, more protein,
Yeah.
less carbs.
So you and your wife have 2 children born in the United
Yes.
States. Do you and your wife take special time to integrate your culture into your home? And what is their favorite custom?
Okay, so yes, we take a lot of time to talk to them about our culture, and obviously the younger one is 4, so he's not aware of what's going on. But the older one, my 13-year-old, is taking more interest into our culture and how things are done, and he asks questions about what happened in Kosovo. Why does this happen? Why does that happen? Why we have certain sayings? And I think my son's favorite part of the tradition is that, like for Christmas here, you get gifts. Back home when we have Eid, which is our celebration of the end of Ramadan, kids usually get treats and or money. So my son gets money from the grandparents and us every Eid. So that's a very favorite tradition. And then he saves that money and he buys whatever he needs to buy. And he loves it. And of course, at the big feast of end of Ramadan, the Eid is we celebrate with a huge dinner, and that's another thing because my son really likes to eat a lot. So we serve sweets, baklava, and all the traditional dishes, and so that's a big deal thing.
The final question is, when can we come over for dinner? But seriously, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for all you do for the students at SMMCS and for sharing your culture with us.
Oh, thank you, and we will organize something for you to eat here.
Thank you, Mr. Hashani.
All right.